Hi there, in this video I'm going to show you how to put together the Canoe gift box, which is an SVG file from Simply Crafty SVGs. So I'm going to start with the Canoe. So I've already put these two little panels on the side of the Canoe. One's kind of a bottom, either decorative or water, and the top is a trim. So I wanted to fold back on the scores first, and then want to move things out of the way. I started gluing before I moved. Don't have anything underneath, but let's move that out of the way. Okay, so with this trim, it's very, very precise. So you need to kind of get it lined up to the edge. Now the first one for me went on perfect, but you want to line it up to the edge as close as you can, and then just line it up around the edge. So it's kind of slightly curved because of the curve of the Canoe. So my thing to you is try to line it up on the top. If it lines up and it looks good and there's a little bit of excess on the edge, as you will see I have a little excess. I didn't go all the way to this fold. So try to go to each side and fit it in, but I had a little bit of overlap. And I guarantee it's exact size, but it's just a user error, so I just trimmed it off, that little piece. So if that happens to you, just get it where it is and then trim it off. But it's easier to put on before you assemble. You can see it's the same exact size. It's just a matter of, for some reason, I was a little bit off on the second one. But it's not a big deal. The bottom one won't be the same case. You do still want to line up one edge so that if you lined up the left edge to the left side, and then follow it along the bottom score lines, make sure it's lined up just slightly, either slightly above or with it. And don't do that. Put glue and drop it on your table. That's why I always have a wet paper towel handy, just in case I do something or wipe it off my hands or a project. My little blooper. I might have more than one though. Just a warning. Or something to look forward to. I don't know. But I have the drop C's a lot. So I'm just curling it just slightly. That'll get it ready to assemble. So you want to make sure all the tabs are folded and everything prior to the next step, which is assembly. And I just add a little bit of charcoal chalk ink to the edge to hide the green on top. So just moving things out of the way to get ready for the next step. For some reason through this video my craft mat was moving, so I usually have it anchored down. So we add glue to that little tab and then match it up best you can. Try to match up to the edge. The little panel things might not match up perfectly, but just make sure that that right edge matches up to the tab fold on the left. And just apply a lot of pressure to make sure it's secure. And you see it's kind of at an angle because you're matching up the edge to the tab fold. And we're folding it over. We're going to do the other side. So we're just carefully matching up that edge to the tab fold and making sure that it's aligned properly. So you can see the outside of the Canoes coming together. So we're going to do a method I like to do with especially curved items. I do it with a lot of items that have tabs on the bottom. But we're going to glue a panel inside. So the one we want to glue on the inside, we want the texture facing up if you're using a textured paper. So I'm kind of curling it in such a manner so the texture's up. So the first thing you want to do is anchor it to those teeny tabs on the end. So you want to get a fine tip applicator's good for Darius. It's a Darice applicator if you're interested. I have a link below. So we're going to put that corner right into the edge there. And we're carefully lining up the right and left edges of that panel to the inside tab folds. And then you can flip it over and you can adjust it. They overlap on purpose, those tabs. I've tried them smaller, but if I went any smaller, it would be hard to glue. So I'm just using my fingertips to make sure that I'm applying pressure while they're aligned in there. There's going to be a slight gap, but try to get the edges of that panel as close to the inside of those tab folds as possible. And you'll continue to do the same thing, but it gets easier with the larger tabs. So you just want to not make a mess like that. Okay, so blooper 2. And I'm just adding, I did it on 3 on each side, so you want to kind of add glue to each side and do it a little at a time, or you can do them all at once. I have glue that's fast drying, so I'm not that fast, and I want to make sure that I get those sides. So you can see I'm kind of pushing in the side to make sure those edges are aligned with the inside tab folds of those tabs down there. And then you just continue to do the same thing all the way to the other side. And then I wouldn't worry too much. I mean, you can be careful with your glue because you always should try to be careful with your glue. You don't want it to show anywhere where it's going to show. But on the bottom, we have another panel that we're going to just place over the same size that will hide any excess glue on the bottom at least. So just be careful on the sides and inside. So on this step, I'm adding glue to the remaining tabs. Then I'll just push them in, and then I'm going to start from where I left off and go to the other end. So you want to continue where you left off and apply pressure slowly to the other end. And you don't want to push down too hard when you get to the other end because it's curved, and you can use a little. It's easier to flip it over and use your fingers. Tried to use a chopstick, but it's easier just to do this, for me at least. And you can see that's the bottom of it. So we're just going to go ahead and take this panel and glue that on to cover all those tabs. So if you just wanted to make a canoe only and you didn't want the box portion, you could do that. And then after we get through, we'll add the seats and the ends of the canoe and make the oars, or at least show you how you can possibly attach the oars if you're just going to do it. Make the canoe part and not the box. So just line it up. And the biggest thing when you're doing panels on the bottom, for me at least, is to make sure you go ahead and line it up properly and then get glue as close to the edge as possible so you can't really see that there's a panel too much on the bottom. You're still going to see it, but just applying pressure all the way down. And then I missed a little glue there, so just getting it close. And just spread it out so it doesn't bleed out as much. And then holding it in place. Then I'm just going to ink those bottom edges. And the only reason I do that is it helps hide the gaps. I mean, I'm not going to say this is like the biggest artsy thing, but it also kind of highlights. Anyway, for me, I like inking the edges a lot. So if you like the look, great. If you don't, and this is what I mean by not having it come apart near the edges. I just want to be careful with glue when I put it on so I don't put as much sometimes. And that's where I just use my fine tip applicator to fix it. I can make it look all pretty, but the reality is I have the same issues as any other crafter. Is sometimes I make mistakes and then you move on with life. So now we're going to put in these the Canoe ends. So they have little tabs on the side to attach on the inside of the Canoe. So if you see, I've already folded one, and this is how it's going to insert and glue. So I'm going to fold the other ones. I already folded the first one, so I want to show you how it folds. So you just make sure you get a really good edge on that pointy piece on both sides. It'll be easier to put in. So this is where you want to use really a fine tip applicator so you can control the glue, because you really don't want the glue leaking up. And the reason the tabs are so, I mean, I could make them bigger, but it's still difficult no matter what, but we just don't want to see them when they're in the box. So it's the same with the seats as well. So we're just gonna, what's nice about this is that you can push open the box a little bit to get it in place first. And then I just kind of use my fingers to get it attached to one side lightly, and then line it up on the other side. So you're lining up that tab fold on that little end piece with the edge of the Canoe. That's too thick. I have to get my wooden chopstick. It was smaller, so use something with the small end. So I'm just going to use my pick-me-up stick. My pick-me-up. I can use it for multiple purposes, but I'm just helping to apply pressure on those inside tabs. So whatever you have, like a blunt instrument to get in there, it would be handy. So we're going to do the other one. So you can watch it again if you're confused. Or so I just open it up a little bit to get it in place first, so I don't have glue all over the sides. So I am kind of opening it with my fingers and then getting it in place on one side, and then doing the same on the other side. So I'm just getting it initially attached, and so it's not stuck yet. And once I get it in place, I just go and apply additional pressure. So I had to get my wooden chopstick, my free tool, and that has an end that's small enough for me to get to those two other tabs. If you don't have anything like that, go out for Chinese food and get a wooden chopstick. It's a great tool. Actually, it's one of my most used tools, believe it or not, except for, obviously the die cutter and paper, and well, paper's not a supply, but so these are just going to fit in, and they're going to attach with little side tabs. So they're going to one in the middle and then two on either side. So I would add glue to, actually I did both tabs at once, but I would suggest doing one tab, so you can watch further for the other two benches, but you can do it with both tabs. I know it's out of focus. That way, if you did it on one, I did it on both, and I was so slow that it dried up, so I actually cut the video a little bit, but that happens. But I want to get it in place where I want it, and you can go further down if you want. If you want to make them all the same distance, I don't have an exact place for it, for you to place it, but you can fit it in there and it'll fit in. So here I'm going to show you a tip on how to apply pressure to that tab since it's so small. You want to kind of get your fingertips in, and you can apply pressure with one finger as applying pressure with the other hand, or you could actually put it on the table as well, on its side, to apply pressure to those tabs. And this is the instant where the glue dried because I was so slow in getting into place. And again, the tip, as I had with the ends, you can kind of make it wide so you don't get glue on the sides. But if you just glue one tab at a time, So just anchor one tab on one side, get it in place, figure out where it goes, and then glue the tab, and then you can glue the other tab. So I'll show that to you right now. So you see that it kind of goes into place there. Well, it does once it gets glued, at least. But we're going to add glue to only one tab. And I kind of know where it goes because that's why we dry fit it. So I'm just getting it into place gently, and you can, like I said, you can pull it apart a little bit so you can get it in. You see I didn't get any glue. You know, this is not an exact model, so it's just to give an idea for somebody that may have a canoe or like the outdoors or something like that. Because it's not popular where I am, really, because I'm in Arizona, but it's popular in, I guess, Midwest and other states that have a lot of water. We just have desert. What's popular here is motorcycles and UTVs and things you can ride around in the dirt. There's water here and there too. There's rivers. There's boating. Just a different kind of boating. Now you got me rambling. Anyways, we're going to do the other side. And as I was rambling, we anchor it on one side, and then once you get the first side anchored, you can flip it up, add glue to the second tab, and anchor the second tab. Just make sure it's pushed in a little bit so you don't get glue on the side as you're putting it in, or you can kind of pull back the side just to make sure doesn't hit before it's in place. And just eyeball it. With round things like this, it's hard to put cut lines to help you. It's just easier to do it this way. Even if they were there, you'd probably have a hard time getting to them depending on how it curved when you put it together. So there's the finished canoe. And then we have the oars. So if you just wanted to give it as is, you could attach the oars on the side, because you could put little gifty things inside. You could put a little tag on the outside with a sentiment, something like that. Or you could put them inside. But now we're going to go, if you want to add the box, we're going to show you how to put together the box. So here's the bottom, the big box portion, and then we'll do the lid afterwards. They're assembled similarly. So you want to fold on the score lines. I know it went off camera for a second, but we're doing the second one too, so you'll be able to see it. I'm used to working close to me, so it is a challenge sometimes working with a camera. I try to do my best to not go off camera. But you can see me folding the tabs, and when it gets to that large tab, I just put it against the table and flip it over and fold it. I had to get something really quick here. And you can see that's how it's folded. Sorry for that delay, but that's how I do the long tabs. And there's a little bit more of an angle than you see in this video on that large tab, because I saw they were overlapping when I put them together. And this is the third time I put this box together, so I don't know why I didn't notice it. So we're going to add glue to this side tab. We're going to match up that right edge to the tab fold there, making sure it's aligned at the top. You can just fold it over, making sure after that first one dries. Get little bits of dried glue off. I'm going to add glue to that second. So it just folds right over, and you can see how I folded it over on that other score. And then we're going to line that up just like we did the first one. Sometimes you have off video days. This was like an off video week for me for whatever reason. So I did my best, but we all have bad days. It's not always easy doing videos. So what I would strongly recommend, and I didn't do this on the first, but for the lid, I actually attached that long piece before I assembled it on this long tab, because we just want to attach it. If you want to do it on the outside like this, you can attach that long tab and then glue it on the outside. But we're not going to do that. I'm going to show you an easier method. The only difference is that if you there's two things. If you do it this way, you're going to see the tabs on the bottom. I always say it's not a big deal to see the tabs on the bottom because it's a box and you're giving it to somebody. If it were a display item, I think I would cover it. But with boxes, I don't think it's a big deal seeing the tabs on the bottom. If you don't like them, just go ahead and cut out another piece just like that piece on the left. I didn't include 2 for this bottom piece. I included 2 for the lid. So you can watch the lid portion if you want to see that before you put this together. But I'm just fitting it in like I did the Canoe. The difference is I glue all the tabs at once, and then I'm gently getting it in place, making sure that each side is aligned with the inside tab folds of each of the sides, and then applying pressure once it's aligned. So kind of pushing in the sides, and because this is a longer box, it's not really rigid. So it's a little bit flimsy on the sides. But it is a box and it'll work, especially once you get the lid on. So some people might not like that. So again, you can go ahead and print another piece, cut out another piece if you want to cover that. So here's a different way to put together the same box. So first, before we put it together, I want to add a couple panels. And what I would suggest, first I'm going to fold these little side, these are the sides of the lid. So I'm folding it the same way I did with the actual box. It's just a little bit larger so it fits over the top. But I fold it first because it's easier to put on the panels. That's just me. So the panels I suggest you put on are the top panel, because it'll be easier than when it's together. So it just centers there. And it just is going to have a little edge of the blue showing around. If you didn't want to use a panel, obviously you wouldn't have to use a panel. Be careful, I'm using a really thin paper, so I'm just kind of thinning out the glue with my fingertips in some areas so it doesn't bubble up. Then you just go ahead and carefully center it. Now, if it's not perfect, you're probably the only one who's going to notice. Because remember, you're going to have a canoe on top. So the sides I would suggest you putting on before it's assembled are only these curvy sides. I'm going to show you that you can put on that little edge side, but I would not do that. And there's a reason. Because I'm going to show you one of them put on before and one of them put on after, and the reasons why. So lightly put glue, and what this does, it goes end to end, so it goes from one end to the other, but there's going to be a space on the top and bottom. And try to keep that same space on the other side as well, because remember, we're going to put these ends on. I'm going to put one of them on before, just to show you. But you want them to be aligned when you put those end pieces on. So we'll put the other side on first. Just moving things around, getting them ready. I usually have everything on my right hand side because I'm right-handed and I don't like my arm going over the video. All these little things you really didn't want to know, I'm sure. So we're doing the same thing and making sure that the spacing is just from the naked eye is the same. So I'm lining it up on that score line, or the fold I should say, because I folded it, and then just carefully placing it and making sure the edge matches up. If it's a smidgen off, nobody's gonna notice. We'll put that other panel on, at least the first end panel, shortly, but we're going to start assembling the lid first. So it'll be assembled similarly to the box. So we're just going to add a little glue to this tab. I was just trying to get the excess off with my finger. And then align that edge to the tab fold. And then you'll just want to make sure it's aligned on the top and bottom as well. We'll just apply some pressure, get it good and secure for the next step. And we'll put that eventually right there. So I'm going to flip this over. Before I attach the other edge, I'm going to attach the lid top now. And the reason is because it's flatter, it's easier. So if you wanted to do this with the box, that's why I tried to tell you when we were putting the box together that you could watch this part. You just want to line this edge up. And what this does is it'll anchor it so when we glue on the remaining tabs, that it won't be as difficult to get that large tab on, and then just applying pressure. We're going to flip this over. I'm going to fold it over like I did the box, just getting it in the right position, and then you can flip it over to glue the other side. So it's the same thing. The difference is that we just have the lid attached. It's a little bit cumbersome, but honestly this was easier than the first method. If you want to put depending on if you didn't care how I attached the bottom of the other box, that's of course your choice. Some people already know how they're going to put it together. They put so many things together. I don't like to dictate. If you can figure it out, then go ahead and do it. So when it comes to folded panels that have scores in them, for us there's a little trick because it actually has to be a little bit bigger than the area because of the fold. It kind of, especially if you're using thicker paper, I'm using really thin paper. But the reason why you don't want to put them on generally before, and I'll show you, is you want to line it up, but you kind of have to line it up to the scores. So you kind of have to pull those scores up. So it is easier to put on afterwards, but you see, I dropped it. That has that blooper number 3. I'm trying to keep count. I think it's more than that. Anyways, we want to align that left. So we want the same space on top and bottom. And I just had the dropsies today. I told you this is just a bad video. Or not bad video, but it was just a bad day videotaping. But at the same time, I'm aligning it up to the score lines. So the problem with when you have scores like this and you go flat again, it kind of buckles when you fold it back down. So it buckles up. So there's a little buckling. So moral of the story, why I don't tell you to put them on first, is because of that. But it didn't cause any harm to this. I just want you to be aware of that. So now you can add, I'm just going to add glue to these three tabs on the end to glue the next part. I probably would suggest that if you can, do all of them at once, and then you won't have to reach in to add glue to the remaining tabs. But I wanted to do it slow because everybody has a preference in how they do projects. So what I'm doing is lining up the edge of that top panel to the tab fold, lining it up to the edge of the lid edges, I should say. We want to get it nice and secure and get it as close as possible so you're not really seeing that it's glued there as much. So I'll just flip it over once I get into place and apply pressure. The biggest thing is just aligning it properly, that top panel. So if you do it this way, the challenge is just getting the glue inside. So you can kind of flip it up and add glue. I'm not going to be able to show you the at that angle, but you want to just add glue there. It's just a matter of getting your hand right. And you could have done it, you see how it's lifted up on the other side? You could actually reach in that side too. And I had a little bit of excess, so I'm just spreading it out with my finger. I don't want to waste the glue on my fingertips, so I'm just going to add it to the 2 tabs. I just squeezed it too much, the 3 other tabs. Gotta go wipe them off. So if your glue is not as fast drying as the Scotch quick dry I'm using, you probably could add glue depending on how much you actually can add. You know, obviously be careful with how much, because you don't want buckling or to see the glue. Because if I use too much, I'll be able to see that. And I had a little bit of a mess in the side, but I do have a panel to cover the tabs inside. I think it was more important to cover the tabs on a lid, because when you open a lid, you can see them, or the person receiving that box can see them. So you can see I had a little bit too much glue. So don't do what I would do, because my trick is there's no mistakes. You just hide whatever you think is a mistake, and there you go. That's how you hide it. So we're just going to glue that panel in. I'm just showing you that it hides it. And not very liberally as I did. It was a great video and glue day. I think I need some time off. No. Sometimes, I put a little bit too much glue. And then you just press it in there to hide all those tabs. That was the easy part. Then it just goes right on. So the last thing is, I mean, you could always use this box by itself too. We're going to add that side panel here. So I'm just putting a light bead of glue around the edge and a little bit in the middle. And then you just want to match up where it's scored. And I know it went off camera again. You're just matching up in that area, and you're making sure that it's the same height as the other two to make sure it looks seamless around the edge. I mean, you can see it, but much easier to do them separately than it would be some long strip. So next thing, I already have double sticky foam tape on these little oars, and I'll show you where I'm going to place them. You can place them anywhere, but so for the canoe, you can put it on any way you want. You want to put it straight across, you can. At an angle, you can. However you want to place it, depending on what else you're going to put on the box. You might put other embellishments that putting it kitty corner might help. So I'm just adding glue to just part of the bottom, not the entire bottom, just the middle of the bottom piece. And then I'm going to kind of go at an angle a bit. So I didn't put glue on the entire bottom, just kind of towards the middle third, I would say. Just enough where it touches, and you can apply pressure. So I did that, so I'm just going to reach in and apply a little pressure from the inside the canoe and inside. Make sure it stays stuck. You could use like glue dots too. Something else. There's other adhesive that would work well for that application. Then for me, I decided I was going to place these oars, like cross the oars on the top of the lid. So whatever you decide, you could put a little embellishment or tag at on the actual bottom. That my final box has that. I added a little bit of twine if you see the pictures. And I'm just going to add a little dot of glue there so I can attach those two. That's it. I've had the Canoe created for a while, but I wasn't quite sure how I was going to use it, so here it is. I hope you enjoyed this project, and I look forward to making hopefully a couple more boats. Thanks for watching.